In this video, I'd like to take you through the Flow Public API. Now, you may have seen from a previous video, we showed this Ignition Perspective dashboard that was dynamically built up as tags and measures were integrated from Flow directly into Ignition using the MQTT broker. So what you'll notice is there's an instantaneous value or a tag coming from Ignition. This has been integrated directly from Flow through the MQTT engine. But you'll also notice that there's the spark line for each of these cards. So let's quickly take a look inside Ignition. In the MQTT engine, you'll notice the integration of a number of devices. And let's drill down into one of these devices. This is coming from a UDT that was automatically generated using the Sparkplug B template definition, which we can see here. If we have a look at one of our tags, so let's look at our hourly production. We have a value there for the measure that's coming in. But if you drill in a little bit further, what you can see is we've included in this integration a little bit of metadata relating to that measure or that KPI that's coming from Flow. And what's of particular interest to this video is that we've included in here a link to the data retrieval path for this measure within the Flow Public API, and gives you a full URL with all the parameters you need, except all you need to do is insert a period start and a period end, and that call out to the Flow Public API will return all the data to you, and you can do what you want with that. So that is what we have used then over here to show your historical data. So this is not actually historized inside Ignition. It's historized already in Flow, so why duplicate it? Let's rather integrate it. If we do click on this little event or lightning bolt icon here, here's a little drill down into a bit more of the data. And just for convenience sake, if you ever get hold of this project on the Ignition Exchange, you will see that we've included that full URL here for this time range, in fact. But let's take a look now at a little bit more detail around this Flow Public API. If I go into a Flow system and I look at the deployment view, you'll see there's the Flow server. Underneath the Flow server, I have the Flow API. What I can do is I can go and open that API. I already have it open, so let's go and have a look at that. And what we have here is the documentation for the Flow API. A number of things here. I'm going to start at the search. The search is a universal search which allows you to search for anything within the Flow model, all the way down to searching for metadata around where measures are linked to individual data sources and tags. You can even search for those tag references to find what you're looking for. We'll do a small example on that shortly. Then we have model information. So any metadata that you would like to get from the Flow API relating to measures or event definitions or your hierarchical structure, you can get from the model section. And then I think the third one, which I want to point out, is the data part, which is what that URL we saw in Ignition Perspective, that's what this uses. There are three endpoints that you can use here to get data, one from tags. Now that will allow you to actually drill right through Flow to the underlying data sources and pull the information directly from the underlying data sources that your flow system is connected to. The beauty of that is that that data, no matter what data source you connect to, that data is going to come back to you in a standard flow format, a JSON format. Obviously, any KPIs or measures, data that's being automatically processed by the flow calculation engine, that data you'll be able to retrieve. Any events and metadata around the events, attributes, context, etc., you'll be able to pull that data from the event endpoint. Okay, so let's use an example here. Let's go and search for something. I'm going to try it out. What I'm going to search for is a tag that I know contains FT for flow transmitter in the underlying tag name at the data source level. So that's the level I'm searching through to. Let's execute that query. You'll notice I actually do find something. It finds a tag in the flow model called line 9 booster water. It is in gallons per minute. Description. The match for that search for the FT was on the tag name of the underlying data source property. And I've got two links here. I've got a link to its configuration or its model information, and I've got a link to its data as well. So let's take this ID, and I'm going to then scroll back up to the model section, and under measures, let's try that one out. I'm going to add in that ID, and in the model section of the API, I can retrieve metadata about this measure. So I'm bringing back name, unit of measure, description, interval, type, its retrieval type. I've got an extra property I want to turn on here, and that is to include any model attributes which are effectively configured extensions where you can add additional metadata to your model objects. So here it's brought back an additional field called line, and the value of line is line 9. Okay, and that translates exactly back to what we would see in the flow model. So here's line 9, here is that tag. If I open up its configuration, here's all the metadata, here is the model attribute. Great. Last thing I want to do with this one is use that same ID, but go up to the data, and let's go and get some information relating to the actual data. Right, and we can put in a date here, 2023. In fact, if we leave this date blank, what we can do is just bring back the last value. Great. So here is the last value. It's just used now as the start and end time. Gives me a little bit of the metadata, but not too much, just enough for display purposes. And here is an array of the actual data. Each point has a start and end time. In this case, because it's an individual point, it's the same start and end. There is the value with its full resolution, and we bring back any quality metadata as well. In this case, the underlying data source is giving us a quality of 192, which is great. Right, so for all of you that are programmers, that are integrators, that like to work with RESTful APIs, web APIs, you probably are familiar with Postman. And so what I thought I would do is just show you what we've just done through that documentation page of the API. We would do something very similar with Postman. So one of the things you do need to do when you are integrating with another system is you'll need a bearer token. So let me quickly show you where to go and generate a bearer token for yourself. So under the deployment view in Flow, we're going to double click on the Flow server. Under keys, what you're going to do is you're going to go and create yourself a new key. You will need to have access to the system, and Flow uses Active Directory. You can put in a description for your key. Maybe you're integrating into Power BI, for example, or Tableau, or Seek, whatever system you are integrating into. Ignition, obviously, we've already shown that demo. You can generate a key for yourself, and then you use that key inside your application. I can show that here quickly. Under our auth, you'll see a part of that bearer token that I've already linked in there. Okay, so now let's use that. I've just put my base URL to the API endpoint in a parameter here just to make it easier to read. Then the endpoint is search, query string, query equals, and a string. And I'm looking for anything that contains FT for flow transmitter. I send that out. Great. I've matched on a tag name property within a tag or measure within Flow. I get some of that metadata out, and I also get these links out to the data or the model. Let's do that individually. Take the 1097 is the ID. Let's go to the model endpoint. I've already inserted here the ID is 107, and I want to include those additional metadata fields in my response. There we go. I get the information relating to it, and I get the additional fields. Great. And then lastly, I use that same ID. Let's go and get some data from that tag. If I don't specify a start and an end time, I'm just going to get the last value, the current value of that tag. And remember that when it's a tag, it's drilling down through to the underlying data source. Doesn't matter what data source it is, whatever it is that's connected to Flow, Flow will drill through for you and get that data. And let's try it quickly with a little bit more data than just the last point. So we're going to do a start equals that. Let's go back an hour. And end. Let's see what we get here. All right, so we're getting a couple of points back in this data array over here. All right, you'll see each data point that it gets back. It's only going to bring back the data changes. So it's not going to bring back cyclic data every 10 seconds or every 5 seconds or every second. It's only going to bring it back on change, which makes your queries through to the API incredibly efficient. Great, so I hope that gives you a short introduction to the public API, and we can't wait to see what you build with it next. Thank you.